Welcome to what may be a new series here on the channel, where I give my thoughts on gaming, tech, and whatever I think. This may just end up being limited to game-related thoughts. We'll see how this goes. Frontier Development's Elite Dangerous 2.4 patch release. And while I'm a little bit behind on getting this out, I wanted to wait until I had more time to get an overall view of what's been happening since the patch released, but also any subsequent fixes that were released in response to bugs and issues in 2.4. And there were most certainly some of those. With the release of 2.4, dubbed The Return, we see a major change in activity outside and inside human space, particularly that of the now active Thargoids, the alien race that in Elite lore had up until now been mostly hidden and with only a few sightings, mostly at the locations of the Barnacles. These encounters were previously harmless, with human ships being deactivated by an EMP blast from the Thargoid vessel, which would then proceed to seemingly scan the Barnacle and leave. Now, I have some theories on the purpose of the scan and what the Barnacles may actually be, but that'll be saved for closer to the end of the video. In The Return, we are seeing locations throughout human space where entire fleets are seemingly wiped out in an encounter with one of these mysterious alien ships. An example being in the Pleiades sector IR-W D1-55. Now, I'll have a lot of these listed down in the description below, so you can find them, copy and paste them in, and you can go and search these locations out and see them for yourself. Players are now able to find these locations in which they may interact with the Thargoids in non-human conflict zones and in shipwrecks. I found at least 2 distress calls, one of which was a fleet of Imperial ships that were wiped out, and there were between 1 and 2 Thargoid ships scanning the debris. One of these ships, or both, would approach your ship and scan you, and as long as you weren't hostile and you kept your distance, generally speaking, you were left unharmed. There are, however, some locations in which there are some not so peaceful interactions, because as we aren't entirely sure that these particular Thargoids are actually involved in whatever happened to those ships. Since we're unsure, it could be that any hostile reactions could be just out of fear, being provoked, things like that. With that being said, there are, however, conflict zones, non-human conflict zones in which players can encounter the Thargoids and do battle with them. Up until recently, an encounter with a Thargoid, if you happen to fire upon them, for the most part it seems players were losing these battles, and using any normal weapons resulted in no damage being done to the Thargoid ship, and only resulted in the Thargoids becoming hostile and attacking the player. That being said, recently after the release of 2.4, you did also have a CG occurring in which missiles were being developed, anti-Thargoid weapons. These weapons contained some sort of chemical that allowed the missile to do damage directly to the Thargoids and injure the Thargoid hearts. That being said, it seems that recently the Thargoids are adapting to these weapons, and while they were doing damage, and they still appear to be doing damage, it would seem that it's no longer as much as it once was. Now we have a second CG occurring in which what appears to be a multi-cannon, but Frontier haven't exactly disclosed the exact nature of the weapon, is being worked on. This one again being some form of weaponry against Thargoid ships. The question that remains is whether or not it'll have as much of an impact against the Thargoid ships as the missiles previously did, or if this adaptation that the Thargoid ships have undergone recently will actually in fact change that damage. The reaction that the Thargoids are having in adapting to the damage being done to them is understandable to some degree, as many of us are aware that the Thargoid ships are in fact biological in nature, enough so that to actually destroy one you must destroy hearts contained in the ships. But as this must be done quickly, as the ships are capable of repairing themselves, though the process seems to take a toll on the hearts. Another interesting location can be found in the Hades sector AQ-Y D81, and in several other locations are barnacles Players are describing them as barnacle fields or barnacle forest. Instead of the typical one barnacle that players were finding previously, these fields seem to contain at least a couple of dozen and are shrouded in a green mist which seems to be coming from the barnacles themselves. Between these barnacles, small scavengers can be seen that will flip back and forth, sometimes stopping at a barnacle from time to time, and while it's unclear what the scavengers are doing for or to the barnacles, it is clear that there's some sort of relationship between the two. On to another Thargoid ship location, this time in HIP 17125. A new Thargoid ship has been located. This one crashed into the planet. This one has a very distinct size and shape difference to the ships normally spotted prior to the ship being found. Instead of the typical flower-like shape, this one seems to almost be circular or octagonal in shape. During my visit to this location, I did notice that the target panel does display that this ship is a scout, which may just put it outside of a fighter class. This ship may have been searching out new locations for barnacles. Patch 2.4 didn't release without its fair share of issues. One of the more prominent ones happened to be a bug in which players attempting to wing up would be disconnected and then no longer be able to sign into the game. While this was addressed in a small patch, it did still cause something of a disturbance for many players. And like many of the patches, 2.4 didn't go without a new money-making exploit. This one seems to have been a continuation and worsening of the Quint's passenger mission exploit, in which players were able to earn millions of credits by simply scanning a single location and returning, all in a short distance from the starport. In this instance, players were able to make not just millions or billions per trip, but sometimes trillions or more. And while a patch was released to address the large sums made, and it seems that some of the players had some of those larger amounts taken out of their accounts, players were still able to exploit the passenger missions for up to several hundred credits to several millions. But this too seems to have been addressed, and it seems that these missions now have taken an opposite approach, now are paying out far too small amounts of credits per mission, with reports of trips to Colonia only rewarding around 700,000 credits, and even some missions not having any payout other than commodities. While on the surface it seems like the system simply needs tweaking, looking into some of these missions, the payout on that many wouldn't even cover the insurance cost on a ship rebuy for more expensive ships. One forum poster made mention that even loading up with passengers, a single trip would not cover the cost of an Orca. A vessel with, depending on the loadout, would be around a 3.5 million credit buyback. The risk seems to far outweigh any rewards you could benefit from considering these missions, and it could present a bit of a problem if these sort of trends continue for players, as it could potentially drive players away from doing missions, and for veteran players it could drive more and more out into the black and into exploration, or just simply giving up the game for any length of time. Now, I promised my theories on the barnacles and the scanning that seems to occur when a Thargoid ship approaches one. This isn't something new, and I've actually said this in comments and other videos in the past, but my current belief is that the barnacles are in fact some sort of seed or similar form, and the scans that we are seeing are in fact some form of pruning and manipulation on the Thargoid's part to force the seed to grow into the desired form. Many may now be asking, what form could the Thargoids be grooming the barnacles into? Well, we all know that the Thargoids in their ships and structures are organic alloy in nature. My thoughts are that the barnacles are in fact either potential ships or buildings, and with the discovery of the barnacles fields or forest, I believe these locations could be the sites of large fleets of ships. We could potentially see the barnacles becoming Thargoid ships in the fields, and in smaller solo locations, perhaps outposts and buildings for colonization and expansion, or even some sort of terraforming of planets. With that green mist, we could be seeing them changing the atmosphere of the planet to be more hospitable to their survival. Alright guys, so thanks for watching. What are your thoughts? Has Frontier gone from one extreme to another when it comes to the mission payouts? And what are your thoughts on the barnacles and what they could possibly be? Alright, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.